Hello, my loves. Welcome back. I'm excited because we are getting ready to have a conversation about receiving. I believe that embracing the energy of receptivity is one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves. It's one of the greatest things that we can do for our relationships and our money and our career, and the list goes on and on. And I wish that we had more conversations about it, because I think a large chunk of us are not embracing it at the level that we could be. And if we did, our lives would change. I believe beautiful, incredible, amazing things are coming for each of us. And it's so important that we are available to accept them. You're listening to Seen with Serena Kumara, a podcast all about the journey of coming home to ourselves, the unlearning, the remembering, and the returning to what's always been true about who we are and what we deserve. Now, as we all know, the theme for this season is ease. And to truly embrace that, it is imperative that we become as comfortable as possible with receiving. Ease is really about moving through life with less friction or unnecessary barriers, right? It's really about much more flow than force. And that requires openness and the ability to comfortably receive and comfortably receive big. It means that we don't believe that we always have to do, build, force, prove, earn every little thing, or that everything is ours to create. And when we fight with that, that can be a block to our ease. And so in this co-creation of our bliss, it is important for us to be able to figure out when, where, and how receiving feels easy, where it feels strange or suspicious or out of place or unbelievable, and increasing our capacity to accept the good things that want to come to us. How much support and care and grace are we comfortable with receiving? Because many of us are becoming more clear about what we desire and what we believe we're worthy of and what we're calling in. And I love that. I think it's incredible that we're making those strides. However, what I know from experience is that sometimes, because of what life has taught us, we are actually much more closed than we realize. And although our desires are authentic, we may still not quite have the capacity to receive what we're calling in. The beautiful thing is we can absolutely change that. I would describe receptivity as an energetic posture, which means, yes, it is spiritual and it is energetic, but it is also emotional. It also is communicated via our actions. It also drives some of our actions. It is nervous system related. It's layered. It's the openness and the capacity to receive good things, love, abundance, joy. And I also think that it's like a muscle that sometimes needs to be exercised, and it can absolutely lock up if something goes wrong, which we'll get into in a minute. Our stance with receptivity shows up in whether we're able to receive help or opportunities with an emphasis on the unearned, right? Can we receive money past a certain threshold? Can we receive serendipity? I've heard the saying that if you do it anywhere, you do it everywhere. And I don't think that that's the case here. Like, I think that you can be comfortable receiving gifts, but not necessarily assistance, right? Or maybe you're more comfortable receiving something from a stranger, but not the people that are closest to you, right? Things like that. But I also think that the place where we recognize the struggle is not necessarily the only place it shows up. And that's why the approach is to heal the relationship to receptive energy as a whole, because what we can see is not the only place it shows up. When our receptivity is blocked, it's like our energetic fists are clenched. Our hands are not open. It's like nothing can get in there, right? We say we want support, but when it shows up, it just feels so uncomfortable or fake or untrustworthy. When something makes life feel too light, we reject it, kind of run from it, side eye it, right? It can look like automatically rejecting help. It can look like feeling guilty when someone offers something or feeling guilty when you accept it. When something is given, you assume that there's an invoice that's sort of being tallied up. You feel like you have to give back immediately, right? So, like, you go out with some homegirls, they pay for the coffee, and in your mind, you cannot rest until the next time y'all go out so that you can pay for the coffee. That's the way that that can look. Now, this one might not be the favorite, but it is absolutely true. A sign that your receptivity is a little more blocked would be being offended or triggered by someone else speaking about having a high expectation of receiving, whether it's receiving from life or receiving from the people that they date or etc. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not speaking about injustice or hearing someone speak as if they should receive something no matter who's harmed. I'm talking about instances where someone expresses what they believe they not only deserve, but are destined to receive. For some reason, our instinct is a subtle feeling of, well, who do they think they are to ask for that? Who do they think they are to expect that? Sometimes it sounds like your initial reaction being they're delusional, or it doesn't just happen like that. It doesn't work like that. No one receives that. And while it's uncomfortable to hear, that says much more about what we believe we can and sometimes should receive than anything else. And that is worth exploring, because when we start to dig into why someone else's expectations bother us, some of the other questions that follow could be, well, why do they believe they're allowed to expect that? And then why don't I? And there can be several answers to that question. One that many would start with is around self-worth. I don't think it's automatically the reason or the only reason, but that is a viable possibility. That sometimes we struggle with receiving because we battle with shame or guilt, or somewhere deep down believing that we're not quite good enough. Not that we're not good enough for anything, but maybe getting the big things or getting the big things with ease. Sometimes shame is not about who you are or feeling like you innately are wrong. Sometimes there's shame around wanting more. Sometimes there's this feeling of like, well, I should really just be grateful for what I have. Sometimes there's a belief that we should have the capacity to not only do the thing or build the things, but do it with a smile, do it without stress. Sometimes we have the perception around what we've seen from other folks, and we have that comparison. Well, if this person was able to do it with this little bit, then why should I ask for more? Sometimes there's simply guilt around receiving things that are soft, or receiving generosity, or things that you don't view yourself as having earned. And so often while we're internalizing that, we don't even realize what's happening. And so it results in a sort of a discomfort or a rejection of something we receive without having suffered enough or proven enough. And that piece around suffering, that might sound wild, but I have started questioning things when they go smoother than I expect. Like, something must be off. And so what that creates is like a friction around the ease that I so say I desire. The interesting thing around that guilt that we were just mentioning is that a lot of that is a result of this conditioning, right? Sometimes the conversations around what qualifies as laziness, and being taught that anything worth having requires a ton of hard work and it's not valuable unless you've worked for it. We all know about grind culture. We don't have to go into too many specifics around that. I mean, there's even things around the idea that needing support can make you weak or makes you look weak, and we don't want to be perceived as weak, you know? Those are the kind of things that make true receptivity feel unrealistic or irresponsible or passive in a way that makes us lose control. Sometimes there's a focus on the safety and independence, right? I think I've mentioned before the idea that if I don't do it, it won't get done, or it won't get done right. Being taught it's risky to depend on someone else, like you can only trust yourself. And I get it, right? There's actual value in taking little bits and pieces of many of these things. But unfortunately, we sometimes accidentally internalize extremes. And on top of the taught lessons, not everything is a theory or what someone else has said to us. Quite often, receiving can feel unsafe because of our actual lived experiences. Receptivity is openness, and it requires a real openness. There is a vulnerability that comes from being open, from allowing yourself to not do everything. You then don't control everything. And sometimes things do not go the way that we would have liked. And so that changes our relationship with receiving. For example, sometimes we find ourselves or we are open and our hand is open and what we receive is not what we asked for, right? What we got in our openness was disappointment or hurt feelings or being misunderstood or mistreated. And if that happens too many times, and everybody's makeup is different, one time might be too many times. If that happens too many times, then our spirit starts to associate that openness and that receiving with some kind of danger. This can happen in romantic love. It can happen in friendships. It can happen in family or business or as a result of success. You've been working towards something and you finally receive it. If it's a job title or just an all around upgrade to your life. And so you've received the thing you wanted. What you also got was maybe ended friendships or criticism, isolation. Sometimes there's a kind of pressure that comes with the success that you were not anticipating or some other kind of loss. Like maybe things didn't all go well. And we don't realize that there's a seed that's planted in us that associates the idea that when I get something else, I lose something that was important to me. That kind of realization is a huge gift because that means one, you can address it. You can do the shadow and healing work around it. And you're able to correct the energetic direction. Here's what I mean. Our energetic responses to certain stimuli sends a message to a very neutral universe, right? It's not everything, but it is definitely something. And if the thought of receiving what you desire or the success that you're working towards always has a little tinge of negativity or a little something that says, I really don't want this, that we don't even realize that we're having, and therefore we don't understand the root of, the energy reads as success, negative response. She doesn't want that. And that is not energy that I want any of us sending out. If you hear yourself in some of these clues that you struggle with receptivity, I really would encourage you not to panic or beat yourself up about it. Becoming more open to receiving is not how most of us are conditioned in general. And so building that muscle is something that requires intention for many of us. And therefore, you should meet yourself with love and understanding rather than harsh correction. I'm actually in a place now where I'm in a refresher course for this particular lesson. I have been working on receptivity for at least the past few years, different levels, different layers of it. And even in the work, even while not having mastered it, I still see the fruits of that openness. It just requires a choice and intention and follow through. And I'm saying that to say that we are all on a journey, and the journey doesn't require us to be perfect to receive the perks. Because even in this season, the serendipity is happening. Even in the imperfection, I enjoy more ease. And it is absolutely available to you. So I want to talk about how I have built and I am continuing to build my receptivity. A perspective shift is a really important part of it. Before anything else, had to get very real about what ease requires. Like what ease actually is. It's the not having to do everything the hard way. And sometimes that means not yourself. It's making room for serendipity. I always expect it, but I freak out when it shows up. We got to do that because I want serendipity to know, oh, it is safe here. You want to show up and make things good out of nowhere? You don't have to worry about no energetic friction from me. We good over here. Ease also requires receiving things that are unearned. Now, the reality is that unearned is also another perspective that needs to shift, because sometimes that connects to, did I do this task or put in this work in this area and it resulted in this result? When sometimes the earning is outside of the direct result, right? Sometimes we earn things through the way we show up for other people that's completely unrelated to whatever new thing just showed up for us, right? Sometimes it's in the integrity that we show. Sometimes it's just the energetic hygiene that we show so that we don't slang our nasty, negative, very human feelings with us everywhere we go and put them on other people. And the second big perspective shift was that receiving is not the same as taking, and there is no nobility in never receiving. That really comes from shifting into abundance thinking. Sometimes we don't realize that we feel like if I have it, then I'm automatically taking it from someone else. That there is a limited amount of resources, a limited amount of, honestly, joy and love, whether that's in the front of our mind, that sort of thing can be ingrained in us as well. And so whenever we receive some of it, there's some little voice inside of us that's not even audible that says, why you and not them? But if you're not taking, then you're not taking. And you are worthy of receiving good things. And I've also heard someone else say that when we only give, there's a reason for it. We get something from it, which is true. Generosity feels good and it is beneficial. But when we never receive, we get in the way of someone else gaining the joy of giving to us. And side note, just because you're not receiving does not mean you're giving. Sometimes you're just closed in both directions. Just thought I'd share that. Now, here are some of the practices that I have utilized and I would suggest for healing that wound around receptivity. We're going to start light. The first thing is spend more time around people who expect a lot out of life. Spend more time around people who believe that they deserve good things, that all the best things that life, love, money have to offer them are destined for them. Spend time around people who expect ease and support and to be treated very well. Energetic transference is very real. It's a similar perspective of like people that go to conferences, like business conferences, who don't quite have a business yet. You're there to get tips. You're there to people say like rub shoulders, right? This is a little less like extracting via plugging into somebody and taking from them, but it's about observing and learning and listen to what they say. And it's important that I say not to mimic, to observe what's in front of you and think about what's appropriate for you and how you can make it your own, like how that would work for you in an authentic way. Sometimes that's in person. Sometimes that's just on social media. Like, what's your timeline full of? You might need a couple people that you think are delusional, people that you might not necessarily want to hang out with, but you can absolutely look, I've done this and say, ooh, I need a little of that you got. Let me follow you. Like, I'm not going to binge watch your page and your videos, but I'm going to have you in my orbit because I see this you have more of than I have, and I could use some of this. And I think there's no harm in that. Next, practice receiving in small doses. When someone offers you something, just pause and consider it. Now, the truth is, some of that fear around there being a catch or receiving being unsafe is warranted. Like, you cannot just take anything from anybody. We know that to be true. But that's when you check in with your body. I come from the place of we already have what we need, including our discernment. And so if you are offered something by a person, by the universe, check in with yourself for a second. If it doesn't feel unsafe, if it feels like it would be valuable to you, then move forward. And if it doesn't feel so good, then that's when the discernment goes even further and you can kind of explore why. Okay, is it just because it's unfamiliar or is there really not safety here? And I believe that you will know the answer. And if the issue is the idea that you didn't earn something or guilt that you haven't done enough, an exercise that I would suggest on any given day, any given week, use your journal, video recording, and kind of go through every small piece of output, right? Every time you give. So it can be giving to a person or giving to a cause. And I mean from some big thing to something very small. So you can get a real read on how much you give of your effort and your energy on any given day. And maybe that guilt of I'm not giving enough can go away. Because while the goal is to know you don't have to do anything to earn what you are worthy of, an exercise like this can help until that happens. Now, these are not as light, but they are really important because blocks to receiving happen over time and they pile up. And sometimes as a result of things like trauma and childhood. And so the support that pinpoints the root and provides you with tools and healing are powerful. My first stop is a licensed therapist. Yes, some things are spirit and energy things, some things are brain things, and some things are both. Therapy is really powerful, especially if you get you a good decolonized therapist who can help you employ different kinds of tools. It can be incredibly powerful. I'm also a really big fan of subconscious work like hypnosis and subliminals. These tools are really good for deep rewiring around things like safety and even worth. These are the things that can help us remove what keeps receiving from feeling really familiar to us. And before we get into this week's affirmation, I'm going to bring us to the central question of this episode, whether that's ease, support, freedom, love that you say you want. Can you receive it? And then I have 2 journaling questions for you. 1, where are you doing all the output and leaving no room for energetic input? And where do you need receiving to feel safer? This week's affirmation is what you want exists. Even if you've never seen it up close, your heart's desires are making their way to you as we speak. Don't doubt. Listen, I love you, and it's time to open up our hands because we're deserving of every good thing that's trying to make it to us. Love you. See you next week. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, like, and drop a comment. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, follow the show, leave a review, and share it with someone you love. You can find me on Instagram at Seen with Serena and at serenakumara.com. Until next time, be wildly, radically, and unapologetically good to yourself. Love you.